Hi, I'm John from Just Whisky. If you like today's show, please give it a thumbs up and like, and please subscribe and click the little bell icon to be notified of future shows so you won't be left out. Um, and if consider becoming a Patreon with the link in the description below. And thanks so much for all the new subscribers. I really appreciate the support and the comments, and I respond to all the comments. So really enjoying the engagement, whether we agree or disagree. So today's show is a little bit different. I'm calling it Choices versus Decisions, or Decisions versus Choices. What triggered it was recently Roy at Aquavite talked about this book right here. It's actually comes out once a year, and it's printed in England, and it's called the Malt Whisky Yearbook. It comes out every year. This is the newest one, 2022. And their website is maltwhiskeyyearbook.com. So maltwhiskeyyearbook.com. And it got me thinking, I'm flipping through this, and it's mostly, they list and talk about every Scottish distillery and every global distillery with a brief description of each distillery, and then they go on to talk about discontinued distilleries, and there's also interviews and articles about distillers and people in the industry, and they also again list and talk about the new distilleries coming up worldwide. And as we know, in Scotland right now, I mean, there are well over 130 active Scottish distilleries in Scotland. Worldwide, there are over 600 whiskey distilleries, which made me think about my own collection, which I've broached the subject in a previous earlier episode. Some of us start accumulating possibly more bottles than we can possibly consume in a lifetime. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I've gotten carried away, probably like a lot of other people have. But right now, without purchasing another bottle, I have a solid probably 20 years inventory. Assuming just me by myself consume maybe 10 bottles a year. I don't have a lot of company that really enjoy or appreciate Scotch whiskey the way I do. Most of my company are casual consumers, and so it's basically me on my own, drinking these very, moderately. But anyway, so at my age, I'm looking at my inventory, and I have to, really be realistic and start being more narrow my focus, and buying less, and as always, like Ralphie says, buy quality over quantity. But having said that, you can still have a quantity of quality, and but how much is enough? And that's up to each and every person to decide what their comfort level is. But I'm at the point where um, I've I've bought and tasted close to my curiosity level. Um, and prior to doing this show, I would only have maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 open bottles at any one time, and I would enjoy them, and I would try to like kill the bottle eventually, so that they wouldn't be oxidizing for a great length of time. But now, having doing this show, um, I have 30 to 40 open bottles, and again, it's just me, so I have to really, for me anyway, narrow my focus. So I just wanted to bring like awareness to that. And speaking of awareness, I'll tell you, I really love this dram. Just the regular Longrow, non-age stated, uh, peated, heavily peated Springbank. Um, we don't know, it's natural color, unchill filtered, 46% ABV. I've reviewed this in a previous thing, but I'll tell you, this is um, a great dram that I think flies under the radar a lot. And, in the United States, in my area, uh, just several months ago, maybe a year ago, you could find it for $60 range. Now it's closer to the $70 to $80 range. I still think it's well worth it. It's a delightful dram, which I'm enjoying right now. It's really, really good. Um, so again, just looking at Scotland alone, if you want to narrow your focus, and let's just say, there's 130 distilleries there. If you just bought one bottle from each of those, there's 130 bottles. That's just if you just bought one. Most distilleries, like as an example, Springbank, they make Longrow, Springbank 12, Hazelburn. That's just as one example. So you could easily buy 3 or 4 of their offerings every year, and that's just Springbank. So 130 distilleries times 2 or 3 offerings. Even if you narrowed it down to your favorite 50 and you bought 2 or 3, you could easily be buying, 100 bottles or 150 bottles every year, So it's infinite, it's almost infinite, and it's seemingly endless array of choice for Scotch whiskey and whiskey globally. So again, that's up to everybody to kind of figure out what they want to do. But even if you just chose Scotch and only Scotch, and then just eliminated any and every distillery that chill filters or adds color, you could really narrow down your focus. So that's that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is how us whiskey tubers rate and score whiskeys. I'm just going to give 3 examples that I think demonstrate the disparity sometimes with a whiskey product. One example is the 2019 Lagavulin 12 cask strength. Ralphie reviewed that, and he was quoted in his review as saying it far exceeded his expectations, and he gave it a 91. Now, Top Shelf Whiskey, Mike and Justin, Mike was quoted as saying that, reviewing the same bottle, the same vintage, that it was the worst Lagavulin he's ever had, and he questioned whether it was even worth reviewing. And Mike gave it a very low score of 82, and Justin was a point, maybe a point above that, 83. But it really tainted their expectations of Lagavulin. So there you have two prominent whiskey reviewers that have complete polar opposite a view of a whiskey. Another one, Glen Scotia 15, which I recently reviewed. 4 years ago, Ralphie scored it. 4 years ago, he scored Glen Scotia 15 a 93. I recently reviewed it, and I scored it, I believe, between an 85 and an 87. Now, of course, there's, with Glen Scotia, there's batch variations, and 4 years ago till now is quite a lapse of time. But the Lagavulin 12 was the same year, assumingly the same vintage, and it should be pretty close, but there was a big difference in the scores. So Glen Scotia, again, Ralphie, who is the best. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for him. He's extremely inspirational to me, and probably most, if not all, of the other whiskey tubers that are out there. And then making reference to a Lecheg 10, which I've recently reviewed and talked about many times on my channel. 7 years ago, Ralphie reviewed the old packaging, which he called new, and 7 years ago, Ralphie scored the older version of Lecheg 10 at an 87. Recently, just a couple of months ago, he re-reviewed the newer version of Lecheg 10, and he scored it a 90. With me, I've had the older version and the newer version, and I've bought them from overseas, so I've enjoyed this 700 milliliter bottles, and United States release 750 milliliter bottles of the older bottlings. And I've probably had at least 3 of the older bottlings, United States and European releases. And now I've also had the newer one with the newer packaging. And for my palate, in my opinion, the newer release, I scored it lower than the older Lecheg releases. Now, again, I'm not comparing myself to Ralphie or any other whiskey tubers. I'm just using those as an example to demonstrate that that there can be a big difference in scoring, basically, for the sake of argument, the same product. And yes, there are, I'm sure, batch variations, especially over time, which need to be taken into consideration. But it's the bottom line, it's very subjective, and very opinionated and very emotional, and with emotions come passion. And so I just wanted to vent that and get that out there. And happy Halloween. And I really would recommend this book that comes out once a year. It's shipped from England. I live in Massachusetts, United States, and with shipping and the currency exchange rate, it cost me, like, I think close to $25 to get it over here. I think it was like $18 plus shipping, $25. But it is a wealth of information. The only thing that they don't do, which I wish they did, is when they talk about every Scotch distillery and they give a description and a history of them, they don't talk about whether it's chill filtered or having color added. And just as a suggestion to whoever is the editor, that would be a suggestion to mention whether these distilleries chill filter or not. And the truth is, sometimes we just don't know, and may never know. And it's really the responsibility of the distiller to label it as such or not. And if they don't, we can assume that they probably do chill filter and probably do add color, which is not the case with the Longrow. All natural, unchill filtered. Awesome peated whiskey from Springbank. Absolutely love it. Consistently flies under the radar, in my opinion. Okay, so again, if you like today's show, please click a thumbs up, please subscribe, and please comment. I've said a lot of potentially controversial things, maybe a little rant, but anyway, just stuff I just wanted to get out in the open, off my chest, and now I feel a lot better, especially after a nice dram of Longrow heavily peated. So again, like, subscribe. Thanks so much. Hats off to you all, and take care.